Children's Museum of the Lowcountry continues to engage young children and even adults with their exciting exhibits. Today, I talk one-on-one with the president and CEO of the Children's Museum of the Lowcountry, Coltrane, for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. Coltrane, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thank you. Thanks for having me back.
Oh, I appreciate it greatly. Needless to say, you are the president and CEO of the Children's Museum of the Lowcountry. And of course, as you know, it was established in 1995 and opened in 2003. The Children's Museum of the Lowcountry is a nonprofit organization whose mission, that is to engage young children's potential by inviting families, that is, of all backgrounds with children aged birth to 10 years old to explore the environments and experiences that spark imagination and stimulate curiosity throughout the power of play. So tell me, Miss Karen, what's new, what's now at the Children's Museum of the Lowcountry?
Well, we have a lot to talk about. I'll try to do it quickly, but we are under renovation at the downtown location. We've opened a second location. We got our eyes on some other things, and we got all kinds of good stuff happening. So let me start with what everybody knows, and that is the museum itself downtown. You know, we can't go up and we can't go out. Right. So we're kind of constrained, and we're downtown with all the challenges of being downtown. And so our board did a really rigorous strategic planning process last year. And it's been almost a year, we're almost a year into the plan. And they were like, look, we're the Children's Museum of Lowcountry. When we want to serve the whole region, how can we do that? We knew we couldn't get field trips from way out, you know, and that kind of thing. So we thought, well, let's start and finish the renovation that was envisioned here a while ago, and then let's grow it. And we ended up kind of doing it at the same time, but it just kind of worked out that way. So downtown, we are actually moving the entrance of the museum from where it is kind of in the middle of the building up to Ann Street, where most people park in the garage on Ann Street. And so when you come across, you'll be looking right at the museum and its new entrance. So that is happening in the next few days, actually, the beginning of that, if it ever stopped raining around here. Yeah. And at any rate, that will cause us, and we started in the back of the building on John Street, and we've been working our way up. So when we made the decision to stay open while we were doing these renovations, which there was probably a week or two there in the middle of the summer where we all thought we were going to pull our hair out, but everybody made it through. Yes. And so each room is going to be, if you haven't been there in a while, when you do come, it's going to look very different, but super fun. So far, all the renovations are getting rave reviews. In particular, we were talking about the Live 5 news exhibit. That's been a big hit. Everybody is loving that. The green screen, I see more adults in front of it even than I do children. They're fascinated by doing the weather because they can see, when you're standing in front of it, you can see yourself on the monitor, and all of a sudden you've got changing Live 5 installed their own, you know, stuff in there. So I mean, I go over to the studio every other week and shoot segments for Palmetto Life, and I mean, it is just what's in there. So you're in the same environment. So kids are loving it. Families have a lot of interaction, and that's what we go for. So Publix grocery store is now huge. It was in the smallest room. It's in one of the biggest rooms. Our toddler area got a makeover. It's very Rainbow Row, and we've got miniature version of the Best Friend train, very Charleston. We've very excited about, it was, you know, originally a shrimp boat in the Children's Museum. Then it became a pirate ship for a while, and now it's back to a shrimp boat. But we've been able to rejigger everything in the room and include a dockside cafe. So it's really giving you Shem Creek vibes when you're in there. We've got plans for the next room. We're going to have a brand new lobby, brand new art room, brand new performing arts room. So lots of fun. And then we're working on the outside there. So if somebody takes a little break from us and comes back, they are going to see a completely new experience. And then we opened a new location, in our first ever, in St. George on May 21st. And we have been blown away, stunned. We are knocked back. We've had over 3,000 visitors out there. We didn't know what to expect when we just had no idea because it's in a rural area. But we are seeing people from Somerville, Florence, Orangeburg, Walterboro,
Yes.
and all the surrounds, all the towns, Cottageville, are coming in. People stopping on their way from Columbia, are going in. So at any rate, we've kept all the zip codes. We're looking at it. It's really fun, and it lets us help highlight the wonderful building we're in, which is a Rosenwald school that's been renovated. Was built in the 1920s for African American students in that region, and it is one of the most beautiful renovations of one of these schools. And we've lost so many of these. There were 5,000 of them built, more than 5,000 in the 19 teens and 20s and 30s, and we've lost a lot of them to history. But this is a beautiful example of that, designed by Tuskegee University engineers back in the day. There's a great, rich history, and we're proud to be a part of it and bring it back to life. We had camp out there this summer for 30 kids, a Freedom School camp. We had camp for almost 50 kids downtown. So, it's a lot.
Absolutely. And you said so much in that particular time frame, Karen, that I want to talk to you about and break it down, actually. And I was just over at the museum prior to, obviously, the renovations, but I dropped off some 10% off cards for Church Union at the time. But let me ask you, with that renovation, and as far as moving the entrance up to the Ann Street part, I'm looking at it in my head right now.
Right.
What else will you add to that lobby area now that you have more space on Ann Street?
Oh, look at you asking me the right question. Well, for one thing, we have a teeny tiny gift shop right now. I would call it a gift corner. It's like 8 feet by 8 feet, and that gets blown up into a real store. And this is going to be one of the most fun toy stores to come to. So you're not going to have to pay to come in. And we're going to have 2 exhibits going on in that lobby before you even come in the museum. The museum will start, well, it starts at the front door, but this experience, people could just pop in, pick up something they need, have their kids play for 15 minutes in these 2 little exhibit areas and have a little moment. So that's our idea. We wanted to make something available for families if they don't do admission. Now, if you can't afford admission to the Children's Museum and you're on public assistance, we have wonderful offerings for you. You can get a family membership where you can come all year for free, just for $20, or you can come for $2 a person for visit. So we're trying to remove as many barriers as we can, but we do understand that people dash in, dash out. You may want to pick up something for a birthday party, and that will, be a place that you can do that. So the lobby is going to become an experience in and of itself. Like I said, 2 exhibits in there, kind of fun. And then you're going to come into the museum through the next room, and that'll be the first thing you see is going to be the art room. And you may not know this. You said it was founded in 1995. And did you know it was originally, the papers were drawn up to be the Children's Museum of Charleston Children's Museum of Art was originally the intention. And so art has to remain, and always will, a huge part of who we are. We're science, we're art. We see them going together beautifully because of design thinking. It all works together. But so the first room will be the art room but we're going to start to weave technology into our art room a little bit. So as a tool and a support to children and families' creativity. The next room will be the performing arts room. There'll be a stage that's going to be inspired by the Dock Street Theater. Of course, the Channel 5 exhibit's already in there. We got a few other little elements planned. Next room is Publix.
Yes.
Next room is the toddler area. Next one is that Shem Creek cafe style room. And then we're going to carve out a little space that used to be the Publix room. That's going to be a kind of mom, dad, grandma can chill a little bit, maybe get a drink or something and sit down a little, and with the Boeing Bright Lab right behind it. So and then the outside, more to come there. We're working on it.
Now, Ms. Karen, let me ask you this, Barbara. Now that you're weaving technology with arts and science and obviously performing arts, how much is that costing you all from that particular perspective?
Costing us dollar-wise, you mean?
Yes, ma'am.
It is not insignificant. It not only costs a lot to buy these exhibits, it costs a lot to maintain them. because when you have 100,000 little hands touching, pulling, banging on things, I know people often are surprised when I get around to the business side of what we do as to how difficult it is. We have to be so thoughtful with materials. I mean, you just can't pop a computer on the floor of a museum because it'll be taken apart by the end of the day. So you have to, kind of think through and be thoughtful about those things. But so it does cost money. But happily, there are so many people in this community who care, that the children in this community have what they need and have the best of what they could possibly have in a children's museum. So really, when I came in, I remember the board chair at the time, we talked about, we wanted this children's museum to be commensurate with the quality of the city it sits in, which anyone who lives here or visits here knows we're in the best place in the whole world. So our children's museum needs to be there. So yeah, it costs money, but there are a lot of good foundations and people in the community that have stepped up and said, we'll help you make these things happen.
Absolutely. And we thank them for their dedication to the Children's Museum of the Lowcountry. And while I have you for the next 2 minutes until I get to the next interview, Karen, I wanted to know, what is that child-centered design that privileges children-led and unfacilitated experiences at the museum?
Well, again, back to being thoughtful about design, and we are designing a lot of these spaces ourselves because we've kind of figured out that instead of hiring a big company out of somewhere, we're the ones that watch how children interact. We have years of experience in this, and so we're bringing our own creativity and design and prototyping and testing. So you'll see things come on the museum floor, and then you'll see them go off because we're tinkering and we're figuring it out. We're actually built an office to put our facilities director in the Boeing Bright Lab. So he's going to be out there messing with things, putting it on the table, seeing how kids interact with it, take it back in his office. So we're really trying to include the community as much as we can in the design of what we do, but and demonstrate, because we're going through the scientific method as we figure out what exhibits work and don't work or how to enhance them. And we want to share that with the children too.
So, and obviously, you have the Live 5 News exhibit is probably your most popular exhibit right now.
Yeah, it has to battle it out with the Publix grocery store, I must say.
And I shop at Publix almost every week. But
we all gotta eat.
Yeah, you're right about that. Got to go to the grocery store today. But let me ask you this. Which one of those exhibits do you foresee being on the floor long term, and which ones will be there short term?
The actual exhibits that I'm talking about will be there long term, but things will shift and change. What we call exhibit elements will change. Like right now we've got scanners in the grocery store, for example. When Publix comes up with something new, we'll probably make it look like that too. Again, wherever technology is evolving, we're going to try to be part of that. We're going to lean into the old school stuff, like in Channel 5. We've got the old board with the buttons that they used to use. They gave it to us and said, use it in some way. So it's a little piece of history, but you won't find that $500,000 board now. It's all done digitally. So being able to expose children and give them mom, dad can go, oh, I remember when we had this, and it's anything that prompts those conversations. All those neural pathways are developing for children, and that's what we're trying to make happen.
And what conversations are you having with the community about potential future exhibits?
Well, we actually are thinking we can't do much more downtown because we're so tight in.
Yeah.
But like I said, our strategic plan calls on us to explore growth opportunities throughout the Lowcountry. So you may hear something from us about that. And I think what we like to do is look at the community. That's what we did in St. George. We built every exhibit in there. We knew what was, you never want to go without a grocery store. You never want to go without an art room, but you can do it in a way that is inspired by the community. And there we use the town that was.
Mm.
The community around that school was an African American section of St. George at the time when the school was built, and so we heard from the people in the community that are on the board of the Rosenwald School that went to that school what that town was like, and we made sure that every exhibit was inspired by businesses that were in that town. For example, we have a juke joint that we made a music exhibit with a xylophone, a piano, drums. But on the outside, it looks like a traditional juke joint would have looked like in the 1920s. So that's an example of how we use everything around us to inform design of the overall exhibit, design of the individual elements. And again, we watch and learn and iterate.
Mm. I want to get back to that in just a second, but when you look around the Lowcountry, Karen, which particular city or town resembles the vision, the strategic vision for the Children's Museum in the Lowcountry and its future?
Well, again, because we've kind of got this plan of spreading out, we're going to let wherever we're sitting inspire us. Hence, downtown, we're calling it Charleston from a child's eye view.
Yeah.
So, you're going to see, there may be a Ravenel Bridge popping up. I'm just saying, breaking news with you.
Yeah.
Those are the kinds of things we want to let the iconic elements of the area inspire. And the reason for that is not just because adults get a little charge out of it, but they do because it's super cute. But what it does is allows a parent then who, if a child has gotten fascinated with the bridge, at the Children's Museum, they may, or the best friend train, it's a great thing to then point out the real thing. And in that conversation with the child, it extends the visit of the museum. And that's another thing we're really after, is making those connections for children.
And Karen, let me ask you this then, going back to your previous point when you mentioned St. George, which prominent organization or company do you want to partner with to help, renovate certain, historic, landmarks or collections in and around the Lowcountry?
That's an interesting question. I might say that what we do, the reality of what we do, Quintin, is we look for those iconic things that we don't even need people to point us to. Everybody knows. Because those are the things that the broadest group of children are going to be exposed to.
Cool.
Right? So, like Live 5 News, not everybody maybe watches it, although maybe they should. But when you're flipping through the channels, children they're great with logos. I remember stuff like that. They can say, hey, wait, I saw, because we've got talent posters up, by the way,
oh, yes.
in the exhibit. So when they see Emily from Palmetto Life on the poster, and mom or dad's got the TV show on sometime, there's a connection. And those are the kinds of moments that we're trying to inspire, not just in the museum, but give parents a way to talk about what the child has experienced and make those connections.
What conversation are you having with parents about what other exhibits they want to bring that they hope you all will bring to the museum next?
I don't know that parents particularly, they are clamoring for the water exhibit that got taken out. That's the only thing I hear. The exhibit that came out before COVID and before I was there, and I completely understand that decision to take it out, although I know it was very popular, because our building is an antique building. It was built in the 1800s, and it just wasn't made to have indoor water exhibits. Are extremely humid, cause a lot of humidity. Humidity and wooden buildings don't typically work well together. And so the decision to take it out was absolutely the right one. We are hoping and raising money and hoping that we can put an outdoor water exhibit where it can thrive in Charleston. And again, live more cohesively within our environment. Because if you've been outside in downtown Charleston, as I know you are, like right now, it's hot as Hades. And so running through a little water exhibit or getting a little wet wouldn't bother you one iota. And so that to me is the kind of feedback that we get. We're hearing people say the castle, don't change the castle. So the castle's still there. We're just kind of repurposing around it. So we listen very closely to that feedback, and people aren't shy about giving it.
That's right. And just got some good news. Obviously, the interview has been pushed back to 11:30, so I hope I can continue talking with you for the next, 20 or so minutes. But let me ask you this. and this is probably a redundant question too, Miss Karen, but what other exhibits or other areas within the museum do you want to repurpose right now?
Well, we're doing the whole museum, Quentin, front to back.
Mm,
So, and then the outside.
yes, ma'am.
So we are building a stage outside. So we'll have performances inside from our little ones and performances outside. Hopefully we have room for, storytellers
Yes.
and costume character performers, and really to kind of beef up that performing arts piece of what we do, because we think that's really critical. It's great for children's development to put on a costume and do and engage in pretend play. There's really nothing better before the age of 8 for development, honestly, because that they can try on all kinds of personas, all kinds of. It helps them figure out who they are, which is what this job of their time period in this life is all about. So they are trying to figure out who they are. Great way to do it. Great way to work through things. I always tell the story of when you see little kids playing tea and practicing that,
Yes.
that's really them learning manners. You've told them, sit up, don't put your arms on the table, blah, 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 blah. And if you watch, they'll go back and play it. And that's how we learn before we know how to read, is we play to learn. We touch things, we roll around in dirt. We that's how we learn, with our bodies and through play.
Absolutely.
Once you get to be 9, 10 years old and the brain makes that shift, and you now know how to read, and you learn by reading, you learn by listening better, that kind of thing. So then you learn a different way. And a lot of times once we get to that phase, we forget about the other phase.
Yes.
Because learning was so fun, we didn't think of it as learning.
Yeah, you're
So
absolutely
the
right.
Children's Museum, all the exhibits, everything is dedicated to that play period. So they're learning, and really our bigger job is to teach the parents that while this looks like a pleasant pastime, this is learning. Do more of it.
More of it. And it's still relevant. And this might be a silly question, but what is the state of children's development now that we have technology and social media and all of this going on right now?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, my son came along right as social media was starting. He was like late elementary, middle school, and we didn't have a clue. I think it's really tough for parents right now. The uh, American Academy of Pediatrics has said that they really don't recommend screen time except for FaceTime with relatives, which is a big exception. And an important exception, because that helps build bonds with family members who aren't close. So the American Academy of Pediatrics says go all go on FaceTime with grandma and Aunt Ruby and everybody else. But for actual screens in children's hands, they really say probably not until around 2, sometime in that range, and very guarded. But there are so many. I did a segment on Palmetto Life recently with a bunch of apps that are just amazing, that are helping children get to reading. So I mean, I think I'm not an ogre on technology. I'm kind of a big fan of technology for children, but done properly. I think we all know that when you hand over the iPad, and look, some days this is going to happen because you just wiped out and don't have a choice. And that's okay. Nobody's going to croak over that. But it shouldn't be a regular routine. But technology used to facilitate creativity and play, that's what we're all searching for to find and try to incorporate into children's museums and into children's lives.
What else do you want to incorporate? I know that's another redundant question.
What else do I want to incorporate? Really, the downtown museum, to me, the big opportunity is the outside area. So we're trying to figure out, we've got a couple of options we can do there, we're playing around with. Again, we're always like everybody else, we're limited by the funding we can achieve, we can raise from wonderful people in the community and corporations and foundations. But that's our focus now. We want an area really where people can come together. That to me is the magic of a children's museum. A lot of times our neighborhoods aren't as diverse. and our churches, even our neighborhood stores are not as, bringing the whole community together. Really the one place where everybody is in there together is the Children's Museum, because I always argue, if there's one thing everybody can agree on, they love their children and they want to see them develop properly. So children's museums are beloved by all communities that are aware of them and know about them. And that's our job, to make sure we're getting out there so every community knows about it. In fact, I'll share one other thing.
Yes, ma'am.
We just found out this week, yeah, that we got a federal grant from the Institute of Museum and Library Services. We applied for it in collaboration with Columbia College. And the reason we went with Columbia College is we know them, and we know their Resilience Institute. And they work a lot with children with trauma and teach educators in trauma-informed education. So we applied together with them, and we received this IMLS grant that will allow us to have the Resilience Institute at Columbia College train our staff to expand their professional development in working with children that have had traumatic experiences. And that's important to us because, again, our board of directors has given us the mandate to serve all children in the Lowcountry. It's a huge mandate. Out of a 10,000 square foot building, so that's why we have to grow not only our facilities, but we have to grow our expertise, because we know, the nice thing about Children's Museum is we see happy, joyful children. But we know there are a lot of children out in the community that have barriers to being happy and joyful, and we want to help get them there as well. So, and play our part in that.
Oh, absolutely. And I wanted to ask you this, now that the Children's Museum is growing and expanding, where do you want to grow your expertise next?
Well, I'm getting old. So I think this is my last Children's Museum stop. I ran Adventure in Columbia.
Yes.
And the Children's Museum of Richmond for 10 years.
Yes.
So, but my husband and I decided that if we could live anywhere the rest of our lives, it was probably going to be Charleston, South Carolina. So I'm a neighbor of the museum. I can run back and forth. And I have, for my own expertise, what I want to do is get to know this region even better so that we can, for the time that I'm here, fulfill this strategic plan and be serving hopefully more children by the time it's completed than we were when we started.
Okay. So what is, meaning you're doing your particular time as president CEO, what is the biggest difference about when you started to right now about the Children's Museum of the Lowcountry?
Well, I haven't even been here 2 years yet. So, but I'd say the difference is probably that we've really gotten clear. We spent a lot of time getting clear about who we are and what we're doing. And we've really, you read kind of the intro to what we're doing. We've kind of distilled it down even from that to say that our job is to help children become creative problem solvers, full stop. No matter what they do in life, if they graduate from early childhood years being creative problem solvers, the world is going to be their oyster, job-wise, personal-wise, fulfillment-wise. They'll be lifelong learners. And so that's what we're really focused on.
What problems what problems in your mind, Karen, has the Charleston Museum of the Lowcountry solved for children here in the Lowcountry?
Well, I hope that we have there aren't a lot of resources for informal learning to give parents support around how to do that, because it doesn't all happen in school. It's not all on the schools. And there's so much research coming out that informal learning and experiences like the Children's Museum, the aquarium, a Sunday school class, there's all kinds of everything is a learning experience if adults in children's lives set it up to be so and encourage that. So, and if you're aware, so the Children's Museum should be sort of the mecca, I think, and the first on-ramp into all the cultural and all the resources that are out there that we might not, as families, busy families trying to get a child up and raised, always think about. So we take pretty seriously our role in that regard, and try to build relationships with other institutions like I am. I know they started summer camp this year. They
Oh,
came over and
yes.
talked to us about that. We love our neighbors at the Charleston Museum. There's all, in the aquarium, love those guys, had them in doing some work with the kids that were visiting the museum. So, I mean, a lot of that cross pollination, I think, is really where the future is, and where the community needs us all to be, talking to each other and sharing resources to offer families a real, portfolio of experiences for their children.
As you were just talking a second ago, you just said something very profound to me. But what resources do you, from the from the Children's Museum in the Lowcountry, do you want to share with other institutions and organizations here in the Lowcountry?
Well, it's funny because, it's been said about children's museums that most museums are about something or someone or someplace, and children's museums are the only one about the audience. And that's kind of true. We don't have a dual, the aquarium is about conservation and, all of that stuff, which is all important. Don't hear, I mean, it's critically important, but we're about developing our audience instead of just introducing a audience to a
Right.
topic. So we kind of have a different view of the world. And what I think a lot of museums are finding, and I'm a member of the American Alliance of Museums, we all talk to each other, but what we do find across the museum spectrum is that they are seeing more, they want to have outreach to children, but they don't have experience in that. So a lot of them are knocking on the doors of children's museums and going, how do you engage the little ones? Because in an art museum, you can't see, feel, touch the Picasso, right? I mean, you can see, but
Right.
you can't feel, touch.
Right.
And again, that children, like I said, learn not just with listening and hearing, but they're touching and feeling and rolling and all of that. So how do you take that content and bring it to younger audiences? It's a different skill set, and so we get tapped, and I think throughout the Children's Museum, to provide that expertise to our friends and other museums and our colleagues.
I know, obviously, the Children's Museum of the Lowcountry is just that, serving the community and the children, obviously. But what other additional audience do you hope that you all can develop in the next 5 to 10 years with the strategic plan that you have in place?
Yeah, we are really focused on the kids and the families, caregivers, educators.
Yes.
So, you can't come to the Children's Museum without a child,
Yeah.
and children can't come without an adult. We've
Sure.
seen both. We're always amazed. Unless it's a drop-off program, you can't drop your children off for the
Right,
day.
right.
But also, I'll have people say, well, I just want to check it out. Now, if you're a visitor and you just want to check it out, a staff member will escort you. But obviously, for safety reasons, and
Sure.
it's something we are always conscious of,
Sure.
if you're a lone adult in the museum, if you didn't come in with children, we're going to be with you while you
Right.
tour the museum.
Sure.
So, I mean, that's not Children's Museum Lowcountry. That's every children's museum
Right.
you're ever going to go to. So, but if you ever want to check one out, just call ahead. They'll be happy to have you. They just want to know that
Sure.
what you're coming and why you're coming. But yeah. Anyway, and I'm sorry, I probably lost the beat on your question.
Oh, no. I know you just mentioned, obviously, your core audience is children. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're real clear on that. Children, young families, well, I'd say families with young children. No matter what shape, form, however they come, if they got a young children, they're our target.
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. Well, this was great. Very informative as always. Karen Coltrane with the Children's Museum of the Lowcountry. Thank you for your time. And again, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thank you for your interest in what we're doing. I always appreciate it so much.
Likewise.